Martha Green, a self-made CEO of a highly successful tech company, had built her empire from the ground up. She had turned every challenge into an opportunity and transformed her business into a global leader. Tonight, she arrived at one of her luxury hotels expecting to enjoy the top-tier service her brand was known for. The hotel, nestled in the heart of New York City, was one of the finest in her collection, designed to provide guests with a world-class experience. But what she didn't expect was to be treated with such indifference and worse, disrespect. As she walked up to the front desk, she noticed the young attendant, Clara, barely paying attention. She was slouched in her chair, eyes glued to her phone, scrolling lazily. Martha approached with a polite smile, hoping for the warm welcome the hotel was known for. "Excuse me," Martha said, her voice calm but firm. "I have a reservation under Martha Green." Clara's response was almost dismissive as she glanced up briefly, eyes narrowing. Yeah, sure. Let me check." She typed a few keys on the computer without much care, her focus clearly still on her phone. A few moments later, Clara looked up and said flatly, "I don't see it. You sure you booked here?" Martha's brow furrowed. "I know I have a reservation. It's right here in my confirmation email." Clara barely acknowledged her, not even bothering to look at the phone in Martha's hand. "Maybe you booked the wrong hotel," Clara muttered, waving her hand dismissively as if Martha's presence were an inconvenience. Martha felt a rush of frustration, but kept her composure. She had expected better, not just as a guest, but as the owner of the very hotel she was standing in. But instead of reacting impulsively, Martha decided to take a more calculated approach to uncover the truth behind this treatment. Martha Green stood in the lobby, watching as Clara, the front desk clerk, was escorted out of the hotel by security. The weight of the moment settled in. She had not expected this to unfold as dramatically as it had, but she knew deep down that the way she handled this situation would determine the future of her company and the kind of legacy she wanted to leave. The tension in the room was palpable. Guests who had been in the lobby, having witnessed the unfolding drama, were now whispering amongst themselves. Some were shaking their heads in disbelief. Others nodded in quiet approval. Martha's face remained composed, but inside she felt the adrenaline coursing through her veins. This wasn't just about a single incident. It was about setting a precedent. For too long, corporate environments like hers had ignored small infractions that grew into larger problems. This was the moment when she could show everyone, from her employees to her customers, what true leadership looked like. As Clara and Stephen, the hotel manager, walked out of the building, Martha took a moment to collect herself. This was only the first step. While firing the two employees was necessary, it was the changes that would follow that would truly define the company moving forward. The real test was what came after. She knew her decision would be scrutinized, and that people would question her judgment. Was it too harsh? Were her actions too impulsive? But Martha had learned over the years that leadership wasn't about avoiding tough decisions. It was about standing firm in the face of challenges and holding people accountable for their actions. And that was exactly what she was going to do. In the days that followed, Martha initiated a full-scale audit of the hotel. Every guest complaint was reviewed, and every incident involving customer service was investigated. She wanted to uncover the root causes of the problem, not just address the symptoms. The more she dug, the more it became clear that Clara's behavior wasn't an isolated issue. It was part of a larger, systemic problem that had been brewing for years. The staff had grown complacent, and some employees had begun to treat certain customers with disrespect, all while the management had turned a blind eye. Martha knew that in order to create lasting change, she needed to address the culture within the hotel. And so, she made another tough decision. She called for a company-wide retraining program, one that would focus on empathy, respect, and professionalism. She was committed to making sure that every employee understood that the company's reputation depended on how they treated every guest, no matter who they were. As part of the audit, she also implemented an anonymous feedback system for both guests and staff. This was her way of ensuring that any future issues could be addressed quickly and efficiently before they grew into larger problems. The feedback system was designed not only to give guests a voice, but to also allow employees to share their concerns about the work environment and management. This openness and transparency were key to her vision of creating a company culture rooted in integrity and respect. Martha personally met with the remaining staff members to explain the importance of the new direction the company was taking. She was clear in her expectations. There would be zero tolerance for disrespect, negligence, or discrimination. She made it clear that her decision wasn't about punishing employees. It was about ensuring that the hotel became a place where everyone felt valued and respected. She wanted her hotel to be known not just for its luxury accommodations, but also for its exceptional service. Service that made every guest feel important, no matter their background or status. One of the most important steps in the company's transformation was the new leadership Martha brought into place. She handpicked a new manager, someone who was both competent and empathetic, who understood the importance of creating a positive work environment. The new manager was tasked with overseeing the implementation of the retraining program and ensuring that the lessons learned from the audit would be applied consistently across the hotel. This was no longer just about checking off boxes. It was about fostering a culture of care and respect. As weeks passed, Martha began to see the fruits of her labor. The hotel's atmosphere had changed. Guests reported a noticeable improvement in service, and staff morale was on the rise. Employees were now eager to engage with guests and go the extra mile to ensure that every person who walked through the door felt welcome. There was a renewed sense of pride among the team, and it was clear that the new training program had made an impact. But Martha knew that true change would take time. The incident with Clara and Stephen was only one example of the type of behavior she would no longer tolerate. She had set the tone for the future, but she also knew she had to remain vigilant. She couldn't afford to let complacency creep back into the culture. There would always be challenges, but she was prepared to face them head on. Martha had learned an invaluable lesson through this experience. Leadership isn't just about managing, it's about inspiring. She didn't need to rely on fear or authority to get results. What she needed was the trust and respect of her employees. By setting an example, by demonstrating that she cared about her guests and staff, she was able to foster an environment where everyone felt accountable to each other. The incident with Clara and Stephen had made Martha realize that she was more than just a business owner. She was a steward of her company's values. And it was her responsibility to ensure that the company upheld those values at every level. In the end, Martha's swift action and dedication to creating a better workplace paid off. Her hotel not only regained its reputation, but became a shining example of how businesses should treat their employees and guests. Martha's leadership, guided by integrity and empathy, had turned a difficult situation into an opportunity for growth and positive change. This experience also resonated beyond the hotel industry. Martha's actions inspired other businesses to take a hard look at their own practices and question whether they were truly treating their employees and customers with the respect they deserved. It was clear that one person's willingness to stand up for what was right could make a world of difference. Martha had not only salvaged her company's reputation, but had also ignited a movement for change. And as she sat back in her office, watching the sunset over the city skyline, she felt proud of the legacy she was building, one that would last for generations to come. Months passed since the incident at the hotel, and Martha Green found herself reflecting on how much had changed, not only within the walls of her hotel, but also within her mindset as a leader. What had begun as a single moment of customer service failure had become the catalyst for something much larger, a company-wide transformation. Her hotel was not just a place to sleep for weary travelers anymore. It was a symbol of what could happen when people put fairness, respect, and responsibility at the forefront of everything they did. The road to this transformation had not been easy. Martha had faced resistance, doubt, and even some internal pushback. Not everyone was thrilled about the sweeping changes she had put in motion, and not all her employees had embraced the new direction. There were murmurs of discomfort as employees questioned whether they could meet the new expectations. Some of her long-standing managers were skeptical, worried that the high standards she was setting would be difficult to maintain without compromising efficiency or profitability. However, Martha was resolute. She had seen firsthand how small acts of disrespect could snowball into larger problems, and she was determined to change the culture of complacency that had taken root. The internal audit she had ordered after the Clara incident had uncovered troubling patterns. a lack of accountability, poor communication between departments, and a failure to address complaints in a timely manner. These were systemic issues that Martha knew couldn't be fixed with a simple memo or a few additional training sessions. She made a difficult decision to take a more hands-on approach and immerse herself in the daily operations of the hotel. She spent days shadowing employees, sitting in on meetings, and even answering guest complaints herself. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was necessary. Martha wanted to see firsthand how the changes were being implemented and where gaps still existed. She observed the interactions between her staff and guests, paying attention to the nuances of body language, tone of voice, and the level of engagement. It became clear that the problems weren't just about one or two rogue employees. They were symptoms of a much deeper cultural issue. The hotel had been functioning under an outdated mindset. Customer service was simply about meeting basic expectations, not exceeding them. Martha wanted her employees to go beyond just fulfilling their roles. She wanted them to take pride in creating memorable experiences for guests. Every guest, no matter their background or status, deserved to feel like royalty. It wasn't enough to just be polite. Her staff needed to show genuine care and empathy. She quickly realized that changing a company's culture from the top down wasn't just about firing a few problematic employees or writing a policy. It was about shifting everyone's mindset and rebuilding trust. Trust between management and staff, trust between employees themselves, and trust with the guests who walked through the door. She began to hold regular town hall meetings where employees were encouraged to voice their concerns, share feedback, and discuss how they could collectively improve the guest experience. These sessions, which had once felt like a formality, began to take on real meaning. Staff members were no longer afraid to speak up about what was working and what wasn't. They were engaged, committed, and most importantly, they felt heard. Meanwhile, Martha continued to invest in her employees' development. She brought in leadership coaches and customer service experts who held interactive workshops on emotional intelligence, conflict resolution, and building rapport with guests. The training was designed to help employees not just improve their technical skills, but to develop a deeper understanding of their roles within the larger company mission. It was a slow process, but over time, Martha saw small but significant shifts in behavior. Employees were starting to take ownership of their roles, proactively solving problems instead of waiting for management to intervene. At the same time, Martha worked on improving the hotel's internal communication. She noticed that many of the issues stemmed from poor communication between departments. The front desk wasn't always aware of the special requests from guests. Housekeeping wasn't in sync with maintenance schedules, and the kitchen had no idea what guests were allergic to until the last minute. All these small failures added up to a less than ideal guest experience. Martha worked with her department heads to implement a new communication protocol, utilizing a company-wide app that allowed staff members to quickly share information and address problems as they arose. One of the most rewarding parts of this transformation was seeing the impact on the hotel's guests. Word spread quickly that the hotel was making changes, and soon the reviews started to improve. Martha read through the comments daily, always looking for areas where her staff could improve, but also taking note of the positive feedback. Guests began complimenting the hotel's staff for their attentiveness, friendliness, and the genuine care they felt during their stays. Martha knew that her vision was starting to take shape. The hotel was becoming a place where people were not just checked in and checked out, they were treated like family. However, Martha also understood that this was just the beginning. She couldn't rest on her laurels and expect the changes to sustain themselves. It would take continuous effort to keep the momentum going. She needed to ensure that the values of respect, fairness, and excellence were embedded into the DNA of her business. She introduced a recognition program to celebrate employees who went above and beyond in providing exceptional service. Employees were nominated by their peers and guests, and the winners were rewarded with bonuses, public recognition, and even trips to other hotels in the chain to further their training. Martha also made it clear that there would be no exceptions. Anyone who demonstrated the kind of disrespect that Clara had displayed would be held accountable. But she wasn't just looking for discipline. She was looking for growth. She knew that to truly transform her company, she needed to foster an environment where mistakes were seen as opportunities to learn, not just failures to punish. Over time, the hotel's reputation was restored, and Martha's approach to leadership became a model for others in the industry. She had proven that it wasn't just about the bottom line. It was about building a company that stood for something greater: fairness, respect, and a commitment to excellence. The ripple effects of her actions were felt not just in her company, but in the broader business world, as other companies took notice of the transformation that had taken place. As Martha stood in the lobby one evening, watching a guest thank a staff member for going out of their way to accommodate a request, she felt a deep sense of pride. This wasn't just about fixing a problem. It was about creating a culture where people were genuinely valued and respected. Martha had built something lasting, something that would outlast her time at the helm of the company. The lessons learned from the Clara incident had changed the trajectory of her business, and she was confident that the changes she had made would ensure that the hotel remained a place where everyone, guests and staff alike, felt like they truly belonged. The future was bright. The empire she had built was stronger than ever, and it was founded not just on luxury, but on a foundation of integrity, accountability, and respect. The hotel was buzzing with an energy that was both palpable and transformative. Martha Green, the CEO, had always been a visionary, but after the experience with Clara, she realized that her vision wasn't just about luxury or high-end amenities. It was about creating an environment that felt like home, a place where respect, fairness, and accountability were at the forefront. The internal overhaul that she had set in motion was beginning to take shape, and the results were evident in the way the staff now interacted with guests. Martha's commitment to continuous improvement had led to a complete cultural shift within the company. No longer were employees simply ticking boxes to meet the minimum standards. They were striving for excellence in every aspect of their work. It wasn't just about treating guests well, it was about treating each other well, fostering a spirit of cooperation, empathy, and mutual respect. The hotel's reputation was steadily recovering thanks to Martha's dedication to the staff's development. Guests were noticing the difference. The positive reviews began flooding in, many mentioning the attentive, warm, and professional service they had received. These reviews weren't just about the polished exterior of the building or the exquisite amenities. They were about the human connection that guests felt with the staff. Martha had always believed that people make the difference, and now her team was proving it. But the road to success had not been without its challenges. Martha had faced resistance from some employees who struggled to adapt to the new culture. Many had been comfortable in their old ways, and some of the long-standing staff members found it difficult to embrace the changes that were being enforced. However, Martha knew that change was never easy, and she didn't expect it to be. She took the time to personally coach and mentor these individuals, working with them to align their actions with the company's new values. It was an ongoing process, but Martha was patient. She understood that a culture shift didn't happen overnight. It was a gradual transformation that required nurturing and constant reinforcement. One of the most significant changes was the introduction of a new mentorship program designed to foster collaboration between experienced and newer employees. This initiative not only helped to bridge the generational gap, but also encouraged a sense of community within the workplace. Mentors shared their knowledge and experience, while mentees brought fresh perspectives and enthusiasm. It was a win-win for both parties and helped solidify the team's sense of purpose and unity. Martha also invested heavily in leadership training for her managers. She knew that no change could be sustainable without strong leadership at every level. Her managers had to lead by example and be the embodiment of the values she wanted to instill in the company. They underwent rigorous training in conflict resolution, emotional intelligence, and problem solving. Martha believed that effective leadership wasn't just about managing people. It was about inspiring them. Her goal was for every manager to become a coach, not a boss, someone who could guide their teams through challenges and celebrate their successes. While the internal changes were already making an impact, Martha knew that the true test of the hotel's transformation would be the long-term sustainability of these changes. She wasn't content to rest on her laurels. She wanted to ensure that the hotel's newfound culture of respect and fairness would become ingrained in the fabric of the business. To do that, she introduced a set of core values that would guide every decision the hotel made, from hiring practices to customer service standards to the way staff interacted with one another. These values were displayed prominently throughout the hotel and were reinforced in every training session, meeting, and guest interaction. One of the most striking aspects of the transformation was how the employees began to take ownership of their roles. They no longer saw themselves as cogs in a machine, but as integral parts of a larger mission. Martha noticed a shift in how her staff interacted, not only with guests but with each other. There was a newfound respect and camaraderie among the team, and it was contagious. The atmosphere in the hotel was one of collaboration, innovation, and pride. Everyone, from the housekeeping staff to the front desk agents, understood the importance of their role in creating a memorable experience for the guests. It was no longer just about performing tasks. It was about building relationships and making a lasting impact. Martha's leadership had set the tone for a company-wide cultural renaissance. The hotel wasn't just a luxury destination anymore. It had become a model for how businesses could thrive when they prioritized human connection, respect, and accountability. Martha didn't just change her hotel. She changed the way her team approached their work and their lives. The success of the hotel was no longer measured by revenue alone. It was measured by the level of care and dedication that her employees brought to their work each day. By the time the next year's annual report was due, the hotel's transformation was clear. The turnover rate had dropped significantly, guest satisfaction was at an all-time high, and employee morale was through the roof. Martha had not only turned around the hotel's reputation, but had created a lasting legacy for herself and her team. She had shown that success wasn't just about profits. It was about creating a business that people could believe in, a place where fairness, respect, and integrity were the core principles that guided every action. In the end, Martha Green proved that leadership wasn't just about making bold decisions or having a grand vision. It was about recognizing when things weren't right and taking the necessary steps to fix them, even when those steps were difficult. She had built an empire, not through ruthless tactics or cutthroat competition, but through empathy, respect, and a commitment to doing what was right. The lesson she had learned, and the lesson she had imparted to her team, was that true leadership is not just about reaching the top. It's about bringing others with you and creating an environment where everyone can thrive. As the months passed, Martha Green continued to solidify the changes that had taken root in her hotel. The transformation wasn't just superficial, it was now deeply embedded in the hotel's operations, values, and culture. Employees who had once been disillusioned or disengaged were now taking pride in their work, knowing that they were part of something greater than just a business. The hotel had become a place where respect and dignity were not just expected, but celebrated. Martha's leadership had proven that when you treat people with care and respect, they return that energy tenfold. The hotel's guests began to notice the difference. Many came back specifically because of the positive changes they saw in the staff's attitude, kindness, and professionalism. Word spread quickly through social media, and soon the hotel's reputation as a luxurious yet welcoming destination was solidified. Positive reviews poured in, praising not only the comfort and elegance of the rooms, but also the hospitality of the staff. The impact of the changes went beyond just customer satisfaction. Martha's team was thriving, and this new culture had a ripple effect that extended far beyond the hotel's walls. Many employees began to take on leadership roles within their departments, contributing to the overall growth of the business. Managers who had undergone leadership training now inspired their teams to do the same, creating a self-sustaining cycle of growth and excellence. Martha's decision to demand a full-scale audit had been a turning point, but the real work had only just begun. She understood that maintaining this culture of respect and accountability required constant attention. She made sure to regularly meet with employees, offering them a platform to voice their concerns and suggestions. The message was clear. The hotel's success wasn't just measured in profits, but in the positive impact it had on both its employees and its guests. Martha had built something lasting, a foundation of trust, fairness, and mutual respect that would carry the hotel into the future. Martha Green sat back in her office, looking out over the bustling hotel lobby, her heart swelling with pride. The transformation was no longer a distant dream. It was her reality. Every step she had taken since the unsettling incident had paved the way for a more equitable and respectful environment, both for her employees and her guests. The changes hadn't been easy, and there had been moments of doubt, but seeing the hotel now run smoothly with a staff that genuinely cared about their work made all the challenges worth it. As the hotel's reputation soared, Martha felt the weight of responsibility grow heavier, but also more rewarding. She knew her actions had set a new standard for hospitality, one rooted in respect, kindness, and fairness. Guests returned not just for the luxury of the rooms, but because they felt valued, seen, and heard. And her employees, once apathetic or disheartened, were now empowered, motivated, and proud to be part of a team that stood for something meaningful. In the end, Martha realized that leadership wasn't just about being in charge. It was about setting the right example, making tough decisions, and building a legacy that would continue to thrive long after she was gone. Her journey had taught her the power of standing up for what's right, and she knew that the lessons learned here would serve her for years to come. If you believe in the power of positive leadership, fairness, and making a lasting impact, share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's build a world where kindness and respect are the foundation of all businesses.